All right. Welcome back to the Partnership Mastermind podcast. I'm your host, Chris Lavoie. Today's guest is Alexis Petrichos, a VP of Strategic Partnerships and Ecosystem Marketing at Chili Piper. Alexis has one of the wildest career arcs in the space, starting as an SDR and climbing all the way to VP at the same company. Along the way, he's built Chili Piper's partner program from scratch, turned integrations into real revenue, and now runs both GTM and ecosystem marketing. What I love most about the conversation is how Alexis balances playing long-term ecosystem chess while still delivering short-term results, something every partner leader struggles with. Welcome to the show, Alexis.
It's good to be here, Chris. Thanks for the invite. Just for the audience to know, been also casting Chris and Chris's training, the mastermind training for quite a few years now, if I remember well, right, Chris?
Of course.
So I was very excited to see that initiative from your side, like running a podcast and like having all these incredible guests on season 1. So I'm humbled to be part of that and part of your first season, and all the best.
Amazing. Well, we're thrilled to have you. First things first, we always start each episode with 5 quick-hitting questions to get you warmed up and help the audience get to know you better. So just the first thing that comes to mind, no stress. Ready to rock? Okay, cool. All right. First question. What's one tool you can't live without in your partner stack?
Well, I'll go for Crossbeam. Yeah, if I have to choose one, I'll just say Crossbeam. Yes, of course. Yeah.
Of course. And we'll get into some use cases with Crossbeam later on in some of your plays with the gongs of the world. Next question is, what's the most underrated skill for a successful partner manager to have?
I'll stick to the entrepreneurial mindset. I know it's not like that much of a zoomed in skill, but it's something that I think it's like it should be at the core of the hiring. Hiring for skill would be essential. In my opinion. So entrepreneurial mindset, in a way, it's very hard to zoom in more, but this is what I'm gonna go for.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've had a lot of guests speak to that. I look for curiosity. I think that's a good proxy for entrepreneurial mindset. Just, the people who read the board meeting doc notes and read the QBRs published by the CEO, the people who just like turn over every rock to understand how the company is working and growing, those are typically the people that have that entrepreneurial grit. Cool. Next up, you go ahead.
I think that's indeed a very good proxy on that, the way you put it. So let's see with curiosity, entrepreneurial mindset, and yeah, we'll go for that.
Cool. Next question is, which partnership that you've built taught you the most about how to build successful partnerships? Maybe it was a really challenging, a really complex one. So which specific partnership comes to mind that you learned the most from building?
It would probably be the one that's coming ahead of us. We're about to launch a big partnership. Well, I guess I don't necessarily need to mention the tool, but I can still explain why it's been very important from our side. It's probably the biggest partnership we've ever launched, and it's coming with autumn. And it took us about 5 years to make it happen. Actually, even before I joined Chili Piper, our founders were trying to make this happen. So we were very curious on like what pulled the trigger into like this big organization accepting us as an integration partner, and we've dug a lot into it lately, and it's been like 100 different touches. So touching like every different team members, different product teams, our own customers messaging the provider and like asking for this news. So it's been like so many touches, and I think what this taught me is just perseverance and like staying focused on what you want to do, and just approach it from as many angles as possible, and eventually it's going to happen no matter how big the goal is.
Yeah, I love that. And we'll get into a little bit later about how you balance kind of short-term versus long-term priorities and laying down some bets that grow. Love that. Cool. Next question is, what's the most common mistake you see even senior partner leaders make that really holds their partner program back?
We'll probably expand into that a little bit later as well. But I think that especially on the segment, what we usually call technology partnerships or product partnerships, the partnerships that are usually tied to an integration or a product synergy. I think what usually fails as a strategy is when you approach these relationships from a more traditional, old school channel perspective, and treating like these customers, these partners, as the way you would treat like MSPs or like even service providers and marketing agencies. It's just a different world. So I would say more broadly, it's just convincing yourself that every partnership is different, but specifically like separating these two and the way you approach them. So something that people fail is that when they come from a more traditional channel background, it's very hard to make it adapted to the technology or product partnership play, which is, in my opinion, the most innovative and like ever-changing motion in the partnerships world.
Yeah, totally agree with that, and excited to unpack that a little bit later. Last question. This one's a bit of a fun one. What would you be doing if you weren't in partnerships?
I wouldn't be in tech, I think. So partnerships is the number one thing that and also, well, probably starting a company. I see that somewhere in my future yes, I see it somewhere in my future. But if it was just outside tech, I would probably be in a band because I love singing and like playing the guitar. So I'd do something like that.
Yeah, if you follow your LinkedIn content, which many people do, you see plenty of examples of that at concerts and whatnot. Sweet. All right, that was our warm-up. Now we're going to get into the good stuff. We're going to talk about building partnerships from scratch. We're going to zoom out, right? And one of the things that's most impressive about you that made me so excited to interview is you really are one of the rare folks who has gone from, entry-level type role as an SDR to a VP in the same org. And it was lots of people who have done that by like vertically jumping by switching companies, but you've stayed in one place. So my first question is what did that first SDR role teach you, and how did those skills help you break into partnerships?
Yeah, I think I was very lucky to be placed in an inbound SDR role before Chili Piper. So when I was working for a company called Workable, it's in the recruitment software space. That taught me a lot because I had a ton of time daily on the phone with customers. So I would have like more than 4 or 5 hours per day on the phone with customers that were eager to talk. It wasn't like a cold call where you're just trying to quickly get somebody to get a demo. It was more like very elaborate, long calls with them having requirements, questions, and me having to do the guidance. And something I loved, I even remember one specific case, for example, that there was a prospect that called us and wanted to check out, for a tool in the hiring space, actually in the broader HR space. And we were taught how to understand, do the discovery basically and the pain digging so we can understand if we are the right choice for them and like point them the right way. So one of my favorite moments was when I was actually figuring out that we are not the right choice for them, and I was pointing them out to our partners. So, for example, back then, Workable didn't have an HRIS system. So when I figured out that what they want to do is more around payroll and like more HR functions, I would be like very happy to give an introduction to Bamboo HR or iBob or another provider, basically. And it gave me pleasure just sending this introduction to another tool. And we before me, at least, I didn't know other people doing that. So I started actually sending introductions just instead of just telling them, go ahead, go to, to the website and book a demo. So I really started liking that. And also I started interacting with people in that space because before I became an SDR in Workable, I had no clue about SaaS as a business overall. I don't know how familiar you were with Greece, but our number one industry is tourism and hotels. So we're not that big in that space yet, although there are like a ton of new startups being born every day. But yeah, so that's how I learned like everything around SaaS. I started being curious, talking with customers, and also understanding what they need, and like the piece of satisfaction coming from like pointing customers to the right way is something that gave me also motivation to become better, understand more functions, and start dreaming of at some point joining partnerships, since it always seemed interesting.
I love that. Yeah, but it's really cool that you started to get a glimpse of partnerships, and it sounds like you were doing a better job at sending referrals to your partners as an SDR than a lot of current partner managers are. So I think that's pretty eye-opening. And I particularly have loved hiring SDRs and BDRs for entry-level partner manager roles in my career, because there's something about those people who are successful in those roles that it's hard to teach, right? The ability to accept failure, right? Like maybe 5% of your kind of outbound messages and calls maybe are going to have a success hit. So people who just have that grit are systems and metric oriented, I've found a lot of success in hiring from that particular background. So let's now talk about the next step for you. You get promoted to partner manager. Very next day, VP's gone, right? So suddenly you're the only one running partnerships. No roadmap, no manager. What was that experience like, and what did you do first?
Yeah, I've been talking about this in some other podcasts and events, but it was a nice moment. Well, nice was an intriguing and interesting moment. But the way it worked is that 3 months after I joined Chili Piper, I was out outperforming my monthly goals. I was doing very well as a senior SDR here at Chili Piper. And back then, I'm still growing, but back then was this that spaceship moment where the company needed to absorb people into other departments as we were filling up headcount. So what happened is that I applied for this role. I actually, even before applying, I made a full-on presentation to our ex-VP of partnerships with my dreams about partnerships. They were all like very innovative. I would probably kill all these ideas right now, knowing everything turned out 5 years later. But back then it was very interesting. So she got me promoted to partner manager, and like 2 days later she got she didn't any longer work for Chili Piper. And suddenly I was the only one in partnerships in a company that was growing so fast. I had no mentor, and I had absolutely no idea of what I have to do to make it successful. So definitely an interesting moment. I guess is the question, how did we make it after that? Or
That was the question was just, what was that experience like, which you've answered. The next question then is, I've seen into companies where something like that happens, and it's easy, and a lot of companies will just like, let's just take a pause on partnerships and just like hit the reset button, potentially even moving off of someone like yourself. So what were those first, one or two early wins that help you prove the value of partnerships to keep the function alive and ultimately turn it into what it is today?
well, we can focus on wins, but I also want to focus on failures because my first months were full of that. So I don't want to come in and say, oh, next month I started like revamping our whole playbook. It went great. So of course, like we were failing for quite some time. I think what gave some confidence to our CEO back then that, at some point I'll make it is that I took some overcomplicated documents that the previous leader had created, and as I said, you know what, we're like 70 people right now. We need to do like simple things, make them work, and then replicate instead of just trying to do everything. So I think that brought some peace of mind to our leadership that, at some point, yes, if we focus very, I wouldn't say necessarily narrowly, but a bit more narrow than what we used to, it can bring success at some point. So I narrowed down to specific things that could work. Where we were failing in the early days is that we did exactly what I said that is probably the worst mistake that you can do early on, is that we were asking for cold introductions from partners, and we were getting them because I was persuasive. We made it work, but these were not converting into opportunities, nor did they convert to closed won because there was no context. There was no willingness from the customer side to buy something, and it made no sense. It was like an SDR called outbound email just coming from different person, right? So it didn't work out, and we kept on like pushing on that front for a little bit until we figured out that we can do a lot by ourselves, targeting people better through partnerships, using better messaging, better context, and just improving, using strategy, using partnerships as an overlay across departments. That's how we started doing that. So we passed partner information into our SDR team. We helped them craft SDR cadences, and suddenly we saw that everything that is being touched by this partnership spice, if you call it this way, it's just outperforming everything else. So that's where success started happening, and then we also hired like a head of channel, which reports to the CEO also directly, which is Anthony, my colleague, to work with service agencies. So we started like working on other functions, but once we cracked, we did it one by one basically. So we cracked the code on something, then we moved to something else, and that's how we made it in the early days. And I think, but if you ask me what gave the peace of mind again, like to our leadership team to trust somebody, to take some more time to work on it, is that I did things that made sense. I like using this phrase, that doing things that make sense early on. So that word, of course, if you ask my CEO right now, I think he mentioned it like some days ago in a training or something. He was like, I saw it from the first moment that Alexis had all these skills, but we both know that if it didn't work out, I wouldn't be here. So I'm glad it did.
Amazing. Really great story. A nice segue as well, taking the next step, building for the future while surviving short-term pressure. And in the preparation for this interview, you told me one of the things you're most excited to talk about is building for the future while surviving that short-term pressure. So my first question is why does that resonate so deeply with you? Why is that such an important part of how you operate?
Yeah, I'd say it's not necessarily one of the things that I get excited talking about. It's more something that I feel partnership leaders and reps need out there. So that's why I was excited to talk about it. Because people come in new roles under pressure. Even if you get the promotion, you're again like under a new kind of pressure. So I think partnership leaders and operators in the partnership space are getting the most, well, I won't say the most, but definitely they're getting pressured a lot from executive leadership teams to perform. So, and on the other hand, we all accept and agree on the term that partnership is a long-term game, right? So, of course, like as I told you, our biggest partnership ever, it took me 5 years to bring it to market and like convince them to make it work. So, if that was the only thing I was focusing on, again, I wouldn't be here. So we definitely, so we need to dream big and like start working towards big targets and like big partnerships. But you won't, well, yeah, you won't survive in an organizational structure unless you're able to bring results also today or tomorrow. So the way we've been balancing it on our end and like the way that I've made it work is also comes from the answer that I gave you on the previous question. So basically, that overlay function helped a lot, like prove these early results. And something that helped in order for the other departments to accept that is that at least in Chili Piper we have a culture where a collaboration culture where you can work. I can very easily like ask our head of SDR team or our head of marketing to run a play and try it out. So I was fortunate enough to have this to make tests and like play around. And once it started working, we had this ongoing performance, like everything being working better through our partnership, and we could focus on like launching new integrations, maybe resell motions, like things that take time.
Right.
And it is a crawl work run project, of course, but even the crawling phase should be delivering money to your team so that your role isn't made redundant. So
Love hearing that. And what I see a lot of early stage folks, partner managers, even senior partner managers really struggle with is, how to play the long game and be strategic and start lining up seeds that will ultimately start to grow eventually into something fruitful. And they're always indexing on the now, right? And in part, that's because of the environment they exist within, right? Monthly or quarterly quotas, right? You're trying to, feed your family. You're trying to hit your quota this quarter. So I get that. So the question for you is, how would you coach people on how to draw the line? How do you know when a short-term win might actually hurt your long-term strategy? Which is to say, okay, what you're about to do, partner manager, might help you hit quota this quarter, but it's going to actually set you back long-term because you're not investing in the highest impact areas that you could be at this given time.
yeah, well, I'd say internal selling, as weird as it sounds, I think that's gonna help you because delegating, partnership teams tend to be the leanest teams across organizations, right? So sometimes it's even one person doing everything. So the only way we can survive is by delegating and like working with other teams. So internal selling and like actually convincing other teams that what you're offering, which is like basically starts from data up to relationships and like everything that comes from your department will improve their performance. And it is internal selling. So sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's more difficult, but this is something that you have to make it happen if you want to, to start performing basically. So initially what you do is like basically bringing results through other teams. That's how it worked in our end. So working with other teams. And this also helps you then allocate resources towards your team, grow it and start like basically assigning more resources to your strategic initiatives. But the way I would coach people is to depend on others more. So working internally with our, when doing internal selling and convincing other people that what you're selling, which is again like partnerships, data, relationships, product value, prop, everything around that. Convince like other internal teams to take advantage of that and start fusing into their motions, and then just do storytelling on that. So I worked with this team, we created this, it's like 5x better than what they used to do before. I have a reason to be here. And if you invest resources on my team, we can make it 10x, 20x. So that's my number one advice.
Yeah, no, it's great advice for anyone listening, and we teach this a lot in the mastermind community, where cross-functional collaboration is a standalone lecture topic because of how important it is. And you're right, like partnership managers typically operate in silos, and they don't invest enough early to establish those relationships cross-functionally. So that's a powerful reminder. And a nice transition into our next topic, which is to get into the weeds of how you actually operate and how you actually unlock revenue-driving programs. We're going to start talking about making integrations that actually work. You've clearly figured out how to go beyond just integrate. So let's talk a little bit of how you've turned product into pipeline, one of my personal favorite topics. And you've said before that integrations alone aren't worth much, right? Unless they come with a GTM motion. So the next question is, what's your framework for turning a tech integration into a revenue engine? Because for the audience, so many leadership folks and even C-suites, they think integrations alone are enough to substantiate a revenue channel. So help us understand what they're missing.
First of all, let's start on the ideation process, like how are integrations being built, early on. So even if you're not the project manager or like the person as a partnership leader who initiated this idea about the specific integration, but you more like inherited them, it makes sense to understand why they were built, right? So most of the companies out there, unfortunately, I'd say, build and prioritize integrations based on customer requests. You'll say, why do you say unfortunately? Because integrations cannot be based only on the ARR, how much they touch your ARR. Because I'll give you an example. Like, let's say you have a huge enterprise company that, pays you millions, and they ask for a very niche integration that, nobody else will ever use. Does it make sense to have a go-to-market motion about this? Probably not. It's just you made something just for one company, and then maybe you can target another.
That's a feature.
Yeah, so it's more, again, maybe it is an integration because it connects with another software tool or something, but eventually it is a feature, exactly. So in my case, like, we've had integrations where they start from pure innovation, right? So with one of our most successful integrations, I can actually say which one it is. It's G2. We had zero requests for integration for G2 before we built it. Literally nobody ever had asked us about it because they couldn't even think of this as a concept. So I don't want to pitch, but I can give you the explanation of what we do. So, Concierge is a product that we have that helps you book meetings from contact forms, right? So most of our customers use Concierge on their contact form. So on the book a demo form, so people, when they ask for a demo, they can actually book a meeting, and we do qualification, routing, and everything. But they couldn't think that this identical flow could exist on a marketplace like G2. So nobody had ever asked for that. But when I thought about it and like pitched it to our executive leadership team, everybody was like, yes, this is where the market is going. So we made it work and we launched integration. In the first month, we had 250 customers adopting it. And again, 0 customer requests. So many times we need to be like what I mentioned before, entrepreneurial and innovate on our integrations. So we make sure that the go-to-market motion makes sense, right? So for example, that's why I start always from the ideation phase, where you first make sure that what you want to pitch out there in the market makes sense. Like, it will have an impact. Once we go through that, and you're sure that what you want to pitch is something that works. And I use the word sure. You can never be certain about it. It's always a risk, but you have like everything you can gather as piece of information to have high confidence in that. Once we do that, we always work with the marketing team, we work with the sales team on base. We have our account managers messaging our usual customers, which we get, of course, from Crossbeam, telling them about this integration to drive adoption. We get our SDRs to start prospecting customers of our partner, pitching our integration. We run ads towards these prospects. We make, of course, like LinkedIn. We're big on LinkedIn, so we do give a lot of love to our partners on LinkedIn. We have a special motion that's called the partner vouchers, where customers, new customers and prospects that come through our partners get a discount from our partners. So our partners cover a percentage of buying Chili Piper. We have like a ton of motions. Maybe it doesn't make sense to expand into all of them, but we have a very
we'll get to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's really love that kind of walkthrough. And one thing that's interesting about what you said there is you talked about how sometimes a lot of folks will, lean into customer requests to kind of drive integration adoption. But what you're saying is, hey, look, there's value in that, but there's also value in just bringing smart people to the table who really understand both products, really understand the customer, and you can actually innovate and ideate for net new use cases that maybe customers haven't, actually come forth with. That's interesting to say that. I've succeeded doing both. I've failed doing both, right? And I see a lot of tech partner pros try to come up with use cases out of thin air, right? Typically, when it's one tech partner manager on one side, meeting with another tech partner manager on the other side, and they're just brainstorming. Sometimes they come up with some good ideas, but a lot of times they come up with half-baked ideas. So do you agree that you really need to bring more than just partner manager A and partner manager B to the table to ideate on these things? You really need to bring people like product, sales, customer success, people who are in the trenches, have a close proximity to the customer, to really ideate. Then you can come up with really powerful integrations like a G2. Because in my experience, I see that fail 9 times out of 10 when you just have 2 partnerships people coming up with these ideas. It typically doesn't lead anywhere.
No, absolutely. That's why we have a creative council here at Chili Piper, that we innovate together. So we gather up together and talk about it. But of course, yeah, sometimes I would say I trust partnership leaders if they're being hired very carefully and like carry the skills of a great partner leader. I trust them to ideate, innovate, and like suggest things. But of course, these things should be validated by a broader group of people that are cross-functional and can admit to that. And of course, also I think I also trust the founders. Like, the founders have been around since day one. They also immediately, when they hear an idea, most of the times they can quickly understand if it resonates or not. Ask the right people on their team to also validate it. So I think this bouncing of ideas between the founding team and the operating leaders.
I agree.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's a good takeaway for any tech partner pros listening. We encourage you to be innovative and to come up with great ideas, but don't go too far before you bring in other people to get valuable feedback before you get too invested. Sweet. Cool. Let's keep going. Let's get into a real example. One of the things I'm really impressed by you about is you're not just one of the few people who can make tech partnerships successful, because there's a surprisingly few number of people who can actually do that. But most people who are successful in tech partnerships, it's typically restricted to just basic referral relationships. But you have a lot of success co-selling, which is a more advanced concept than referrals. So as an example, right, your Gong integration, from 0 requests to millions in co-sell to being on stage with Rob Moyer accepting awards, right? So can you walk us through exactly what you did to make that happen, right? How are you able to unlock a true co-sell motion with another tech partner? Because to be honest, that's quite rare, actually.
It ties back to what we were discussing before, and you'll understand why. So the first time we talked about the Gong integration was basically a feature request from a big customer. They wanted us to be able to populate the meeting invites with Gong's consent landing page, where you go on a landing page and it pops up Zoom, basically. So we made it happen, even though it was like a minor feature, because it was a big customer. So as I was telling before, we need to do it every now and then. We powered it up with a go-to-market motion, because we knew that Gong is a big a partner, and they're big in the space. But it didn't deliver like a lot, because again, it was a minor feature. So we didn't expect a lot from this go-to-market launch. But what happened later is that Gong started firstly thinking about launching a cadencing tool, an emailing tool, which is Gong Engage. And when it was in alpha, one of their board team members reached out to me, and he was like, we're building this. We definitely want some scheduling partners when we launch, because most of the prospects we're targeting are using scheduling. So we reached out to us and like the other big providers in the space, and they asked us to build integration. But then the ARR of this product, Gong Engage, was 0. So we're building an integration for something that hadn't even launched at the market at this point. Which is again an entrepreneurial decision, you see, because we needed to understand, the risk and make sure if we want to do it or not. Similar to when I was talking about Z2, we made the decision to build an integration that was even more embedded and harder to build for a tool that had 0 ARR. I had no clue about how this is going to go. Now, the reasons we did it is because we trusted Gong as a partner. We liked working with them. We saw that we had big confidence that they're going to take a chunk of the market when they launch. So we built it. Three months later, the tool goes into beta. They start getting their first customers, and number one feedback is that their main competitors offer scheduling, and they don't have scheduling. So who had the integration prepared by then, who had the consent landing page integration. It was us. It was a fairly, I want to say that, but I want to speak on their behalf. I believe it was a fairly easy decision to go for Chili Piper as the preferred scheduling partner for that, because we had everything already built. We had a huge partner motion behind it, ready to support it, like my team and everything. So Gong made the decision to partner with Chili Piper on the scheduling front, and that led to us doing what you mentioned before, into all these great results. So again, I tried to walk you from the ideation process because it matters. It does matter, and these are the hard decisions that partnership leaders need to make and support, and also internally sell them. So
really great example. I'm glad we went through that. And I want to double click on that because one of the things we talked about earlier is how you've developed a skill set for balancing short-term priorities, but also setting the foundation for long-term wins. And what you just shared is like as real as an example as it can get, right? It'd be tempting for someone less experienced than Alexis to say, oh, Gong is, huge and that sounds great, but how is that going to help me hit my quota this quarter, right? And is that going to distract and pull resources away from me hitting my goals right now, right? When you're less experienced, that's how you feel, right? But after you get enough experience and you start to build up that entrepreneurial mindset, you then start to have the foresight to say, you know what? Yeah, it's not going to necessarily contribute to my goals this quarter, so to speak. It's not going to hit my bank account this quarter. But if this really pays off, this is going to be a huge step function for our entire program. So we need to invest commensurate resources to do that. So I think that's just like a really realistic example of how really successful partnerships actually get built, right? Because I don't think there's enough dialogue in the market around the origin story of really successful partnerships like that. So thanks for sharing that.
I think it also ties back to how much confidence your executive leadership team has on you to drive it forward. So I believe, unfortunately, like partnership leaders that join on month one, they're not able to push for these decisions. It's very hard because
you don't have credibility.
Exactly. So it took me tens of different touches and successful motions to be able to now have the power internally and the confidence to pitch anything to our C-level, to our co-founders and get their yes. And it still takes time. It still takes internal selling, but I have higher confidence now, and I'm able to pull that. And it's something that early, people that get hired have been hired recently don't have. So it's a luxury that I appreciate.
Agreed. Cool. Last question on the integration and partnerships front is the role of AI in partnerships, right? Can't ignore that elephant in the room, obviously changing the way all of us work. And you've mentioned innovations for integrations, but AI is obviously the next wave. So the specific question is, from your seat, how is AI changing how partnerships get built, managed, and even measured?
So we use AI a lot, mostly on the execution front of go-to-market plans. So crafting, messaging, integration paging, we use it there. I don't have high confidence on the power of AI to ideate and innovate early on with no data, because all the ones that are, AI is based on big data to be able to make decisions. But when data points don't even exist out there, it's very hard to innovate from zero. So I still believe that entrepreneurial mindset and that these core skills around innovating writing on a blank canvas, it's where the human mind is still more powerful than AI. So eventually AI will get there, I'm sure about it. It's just that for now, I think innovation lies still on our human brains over here. But we have expanded use cases with AI on our go-to-market execution, and it has saved us time. Basically, however, it's touching all the different teams out there. It's exactly how it touches Chili Piper as well. It saves us time. We could create more scalable messaging. We use it on our landing pages. We use it everywhere on the go-to-market execution.
Thanks for sharing that. Is there any type of mandate or kind of downward pressure, in a healthy way, being radiated, from your leadership and founding team? And just as an example, Toby Luca, CEO of Shopify, famously had a memo recently leaked, right, that he ended up publishing himself, basically sending a memo across the entire 10,000 plus org saying, hey, look, if you don't get in line and start being, really leaning into leveraging AI in your role, you're probably going to get left behind. And there are now countless other examples. Harry Stebbings just made a LinkedIn post about this as well. So what's the AI vibes, so to speak, at Chili Piper right now? Is it more like, hey, we celebrate people who are leaning into that? Or is it more of a, hey, we really are expecting you to start leaning into this, or, there might not be a long-term place for you here? How would you kind of characterize that right now?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that the second messaging fits well with the Piper culture overall, or the way that you're putting it. But of course,
Makes
we look
sense.
at AI with huge curiosity. We're also launching AI products very soon. They're gonna get to market in the next few months. So we're definitely looking at it with curiosity. We're constantly trying and finding different angles to use it within our company. So I wouldn't say we're agnostic or like not do you even care. Of course, like we see the value of AI. We see how much it is improving us, our functions on a day to day. So I would say curiosity is the number one word on how Chili Piper treats AI with, and we're also passionate about it from a product angle, right? How we can launch new products and that are embedded with AI and can provide product value back to our customers. We do extensive like customer surveys on how we can improve our products with AI, and hopefully our customers will get to experience that in the next months when we're launched.
Amazing. Cool. Well, we're hitting the stretch run now, so we're going to bring it back to you. We're going to talk a little bit more about leadership, your growth, and what's made you successful. And in preparing for this, I was scouring your kind of LinkedIn history. And about a year ago, you posted about your promo cycle where I think it was when you hit senior director. And you shared a candid post about some feedback you got from peers kind of characterizing you and, CEO mindset, Greek flair, negotiation assassin, which I really enjoyed. So if you had to pick one superpower, right, for yourself, what is it and how did you approach building it?
Well, I'd say Greek flair, but I still haven't found a way to decode it. So I'll probably go with the CEO mindset in the way, and I'll explain a bit more. It's more the way that I see things at Chili Piper. So I don't look at it from a partnership angle. I look at it from a CEO angle. I have a cross-functional understanding of how things work on a SaaS business, and that has helped me a lot on every piece of on every part of my work. So internal selling, designing the go-to-market execution, targeting of our ACP, like pretty much everything. So I think, I don't know if the person that gave this feedback had exactly what I'm describing in their mind when they say the CEO mindset, but for me, this is what it is. It's having that ownership mentality of what you're doing. And in order to do it, you need to have a broad scope in your work and also a broad angle into how you're looking at things. And I think this is a skill set that I very much value.
Yeah, I love that. Sweet. Cool. Next question is, you work under, Alina Vandenberg, one of the boldest, most visionary CEOs in tech. I'm a huge fan of, very, very popular. Curious, what's it like building a partner function under a founder like that?
Again, it's a huge luxury to have because Alina has trusted me from day one with all my crazy ideas, thoughts, and it literally like doesn't take a ton of time to get the things that I want to do past Alina and Nicholas, especially lately, after we've been working together for like so many years. Even when I have a chat with our HR leader, and we constantly do it and like try to do this leadership feedback and everything, the number one thing that I say that I appreciate is how much these people have trusted me. And I'm not like again like an executive from San Francisco with a shiny degree from an Ivy League university. I'm just a dude from Athens, Greece that found his way into SaaS, learned a ton about it, and wants to execute and make our company better and our customer lives better. So that's the number one thing. I just value their trust, and I feel humble with their trust. That's the number one thing. And then of course, like the creative sessions with them where we go deep and like try to ideate again, like think of new things that we can do are very, very empowering and motivating, and it's amazing to work for them. I know I couldn't have said anything different, but I honestly mean it. I hope it came through this way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, it's great to hear that. And last question on this segment is, for anyone trying to grow in their career, get to your level, what's your top advice for managing up effectively? I think that's something that not enough folks have really figured out quite yet in their careers, and it's so important. So what's your top advice on just managing up? How did you go about building that trust besides just time, right? Time is table stakes. What specifically helps you really manage up effectively to build that trust within the C-suite?
This is indeed a very important skill for everybody in a company, but especially partnership leaders that report directly to the C-levels, to the CEO basically, and the founders. What I would say is that you need to balance the yeses and nos in a way. So basically, you need to balance, when when to understand like your CEO's point of view and start going their way and adapting into their way of working, and when to be able to say no, because with this ties back to the CEO mindset and feeling that part of ownership, because you truly believe that what you're suggesting is the best for the company, and trying to elaborate and like explain why. So I think both our CEOs value knows a ton. Like so they're really, they see that as a really important. They don't like people that just say yes all the time, you know. So that has helped a lot. And being able to also have that equal business stature, you know. I care for my work and my line of business as much as you do for your own, and we're here to figure out the best thing forward. A lot of people, when they go in a call with their founders and CEOs, you feel that difference in the dynamic, and so it shows. I think that people should be more direct, and even if you're an SDR, you know, I believe in that people want the best for their roles, the same way that CEOs and founders want the best for the company. So we should look at the greater good and like coming in that equal business stature.
You can really see that CEO mindset showing up there, just kind of how you speak about it. You sound just like a CEO and founder talking about how best to kind of report up, say, to a CEO. So it's really cool to see you practice what you preach. And then we'll get you out here on the final question. You know, many of our audience are kind of early stage partner managers, senior ICs. So last question for you is, for someone maybe just starting out as a partner manager, what are the 3 things that they should obsess over?
Internal selling, storytelling, innovating. That's how I would put it.
That's beautiful. I love that. Clean and crisp. All right, cool. Well, look, last one for you is, where's the best place, for people to follow you and learn and maybe get connected with you?
They can find me on LinkedIn. I guess you'll pass a URL on when you launch this episode.
Absolutely. Cool. Look, Alexis, this was a masterclass. I really appreciate you coming on, and I can't wait to get this episode live. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Chris, for having me.